Today we're going to be creating a plant face merge. The first thing you want to do is create a US paper style background, and we're going to hit the keys F5 and Shift together, and then as you can see in 1 second, it's going to pop up a menu which lets us fill our background. You want to make sure your foreground is black, and then hit foreground color, hit alright. Then here you have the foreground filled with black. We're going to drag our picture in right now, and then we're just going to hit enter, place it, make sure not to stretch it. I'm going to rename my picture to model. This way it'll be easier to navigate. Bring it back to top, and then I'm going to rasterize the layer. Okay, from here I'm going to make a copy of the model, and I'm going to put one under the black and one over the black. I have the top one selected now, and so I grabbed the pen tool, and here I'm going to do some selecting around the face. A quick tip for when you're making your circular shape around the face is to drag when you make the points. This will add some curve. It takes a little bit of practice to get a decent shape that's not choppy, but once you have it, you're going to want to right click and make a selection, the fourth one down, and just hit alright. Okay, so now I'm going to choose this tool up here at the top left, and I'm going to hit the select the inverse. So now I have that section selected. I'm going to make a new layer so I can move this to. This is going to help with the levels. So I'm going to make sure I've selected the model. I'm going to hit Command X so I can copy the layer and cut it out. And then I'm going to hit Command V on the top layer so I can move it right there. I'm going to displace it just a little bit down and to the right so I can have place to place my plants. Now I'm going to grab the pen tool once again, making a circular selection in a different area. I chose the top left of the forehead. I made it circular, and then I connected the points. From here I right click and then hit make selection. I hit alright, okay, and then I move to this tool, hit M if you want, and then select the inverse, so it's just selecting the skin portion. Okay, and then Command X, I make a new layer, bottom right, there's a button, and then I choose that layer, and I hit Command V with the skin selection. Alright, and then I place it with the check mark. From this point, we're going to select our bush and bring it in. I've chosen this plant. At first I'm just going to shrink it down a little. This way it's going to fit the model's face better. And when you're shrinking it, if you don't hit shift, it's going to warp the plant a little. So I just hit Command Z so I could try it out again. Once you got an appropriate size, move it around. Now you can bring it to the model's face. Bring it to a spot where there's some of the plant hanging out, but most of it is on the face. We're going to move this layer right under the model copy. I'm going to just name it real quick, the plant lower, because we're going to also have a top one. So make sure it's under the model, rasterize the layer. There we are. And now I'm going to make a copy, and to do that you hit Command plus J. We're going to move it above the model's face this time, and we're going to add a clipping mask. So to do that, you want to hit Command and click on your layer, and then add the mask, and select the inverse so it hides it, so Command I. And now you have your foreground color as white, so you bring out your brush, and if you use the foreground color as white, and then you bring out your brush on the model, it's going to reveal the plant. So what you're going to want to do to hide it is use black, because there are some lines left over. Make sure the opacity is at 100. You can zoom in here. I'm using a hard brush. So there you can see how there's some of the lines left over. I'm just getting rid of the lines around the face because it won't matter where the lines are in the white space, because that's where we're going to be adding the plant. So I switch it to a white foreground so we can reveal the plants. Just be careful of where the borders are so you don't cut off any plant or add too much of a plant. This one goes a bit into the model's upper face. And so you can see how the edges of the plant look cut off. So I'm going to shrink down my brush using the brackets keys. And then I can go further until the end of the plant is reached. So there it is. I'm going to go a little bit more and select that part right there. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to zoom out, see how it looks. And I'm going to go back down to the new plant. And I'm going to make the upper plant now. So we just copy the plant, Command J, I renamed it. And now hit Command T to transform it. I moved it up to the top, and it's in between the model and the black. I'm just going to shape it to a shape that I hope will work out. And I think it's going to work out, look good. I make another copy of that, and I move that above the model. So now I have this. I command click on the thumbnail, make a masking layer, hit Command I to inverse it. Now I have the back selected as the foreground. I'm going to use my brush on that mask layer. And so here we are. We got a main problem though. It's not looking very realistic. So I make a new layer and I'm going to call it shadows. This shadows layer, we're going to paint on some shadows over the plants. We want a greenish dark tone. This way we can imitate what the shadows would look like. And we're going to grab a brush. And you see this is a hard brush here. We don't really want a hard brush. We want a softer brush like this one. So I'm going to make sure, and I'm going to shrink my brush down a little. And then we're having some problems right here, so I have to make sure that actually the shadows layer is underneath the face. And then so when it's underneath the face, you can see how I'm painting them on, and it's darkening it, and it's making it a little more realistic. So I want to just make sure I have the smoother brush selected, so when I go to the edges, it's a nicer transition. But the problem with this is that the plant layers with the masking layers are covering up the shadows. So you're going to see, eventually I'm going to go around. Yeah, it's very visible right here. There's a little bit of the lighter plant that's remaining. To do that, we just have to get rid of the top layer of plants so it can reveal the darker lower layer. To do that, we go to the lower plant, we select it, and we're going to make our brush black to hide the plant. And by doing that, we're going to reveal what's underneath it, and it shows how much much smoother transition. But in doing that, I did erase some of the plant, so I just want to fix that up. And so now we have some shadows on the lower one. So it's looking much better. On the top one now, we're going to want to imitate these shadows. So we're going to select the shadows layer again so we can paint some more on. I'm just going to do some naming here. The upper skin is this one right over here. And then we're going to add a bevel and embellish tool. We're going to select on that modifier. And then we could see some options here, such as depth. We want to keep it around this value over here. And then note the angle is also towards the top. I turned down the opacity at the bottom, but I think I'll change that later. So the angle I'm playing around with to see which one looks the best. I'm just moving around. And then I might change the depth to go up a little bit just to make it more visible that it's not a sharp cutoff. And then make the size a little bit bigger. Just under 10 pixels should work around that value. And then I change the angle once more. And then I hit OK once I'm satisfied. Making sure everything is correct. And then I'm going to move on to the next layer. This is the lower skin, so I'm going to name it appropriately. And then I'm going to double click on that layer, open up these settings, bevel and best once more. You can see how it's changed it a lot. We're going to turn up that depth and then turn down that density, the opacity. I'm actually going to turn it up a little, and this is where I use the eyedropper tool to find a skin tone, and then this way I can increase the opacity a little and then make it more consistent throughout the image. And then I turn up the one up there as well. And then we go over here, increase the size a little bit, and then there we are. And then so I'm just going to copy that process I did on the top one as well, where I turn on the opacity, and then I change the color with that little black box, and then I just hover over the skin to pick my tone. There we are. So now I have this. Now one of the main problems remaining is the model herself. So I go to the model, and then I'm going to double click on her. And we're going to add the same modifier, the Bevel and Best. The angle should be consistent. The opacity is around 75. We're going to choose a darker color around the nose area here. And then we're going to turn down the opacity, and then potentially turn up that depth just a little bit, just to show. And then make the size a little bigger. And then we're going to check it right here. You can see how her contour is showing a little more, the depth. And then this should be all of the image compiled. This is the point where I see the inconsistency in the plant. And then there we are with those plants. And then here is the final result. One thing I'm going to do though is crop it so the background is no longer showing. So I just grab the crop tool on the left there, bring them into the black, and hit the check mark right at the top. Now I'm going to choose the brush tool just to get rid of those guiding lines. And then here we are. This is the final product.